Welcome to the Our Ability podcast. Today is a special day. Today is the International Day of Persons with Disabilities Day, as recognized around the world. It's December 3rd when this is recorded, December 3rd, 2024. And it's a day for us to reflect on where we are and look forward to where we are going. I've been in that kind of mood lately, I guess after Thanksgiving, where you give thanks to the things that you have. I had some time to reflect, had family in town, and was able to think about the things that I am thankful and grateful for. Hard to do after an election season, hard to do after reading media and constant negativity, but I decided over Thanksgiving weekend I wanted to think positively about what I have in life, what we all have in life, and where we're going. And today on December 3rd, International Day of Persons with Disabilities, I'm thinking about both what I have and then where we are going. This morning, when I woke up, do what I always do, grab my cup of coffee, turn on the news. And as I'm flipping through the morning news channels, which I do, having had a career in media and can't get the media person out of myself, I start looking at what are some of the stories, what are the headlines, and then what are the deeper stories. And today being December 3rd, there are some disability-related stories. And I noticed that two of the stories on two of the major networks this morning pertained to individuals with disabilities, and they pertained to former athletes. One was an athlete in the Paralympics. One was an athlete that I believe climbed a mountain. And both are fantastic stories. I don't want to diminish that. Certainly as somebody that's hand cycled across New York State or climbed a mountain or golfed, I've had that recognition as well. And so I'm empathetic to that and understanding the media interest in that. But I also am thinking about it from this perspective today. There's the fine line that we all are on, especially those of us that are obviously physically, visibly disabled. And that is the inspiration porn versus regular life. And while it's wonderful to climb a mountain or bike across New York State or hit a hole in one or a Paralympic athlete, it shouldn't just be that gets recognized on a day like today. It should be the other stories as well. And maybe this is a reflection of media. Maybe the fact that it's, these are the stories that resonate. It's similar in nature to why only negative news makes the news instead of positive news. I've had a friend forever that's constantly told me that it should be a good news network, and there should be a good news network. And I suppose on a day like today, we're going to only look at the quote inspirational stories rather than the stories that we in the disability community, we in the business community, we in general society need to see, hear, read, etc. And while it is wonderful to be able to climb a mountain or, as I said, ride a bike or whatever it is, it's equally, if not more important, to talk about paychecks, to talk about education for individuals with disabilities, to talk about economic empowerment, and to talk about accessibility and opportunity. And I take them in that order. To talk about paychecks, whether you're entry level, whether you're a person with an intellectual or developmental disability, whether you're a high school transition program, right up through multiple PhDs, multiply educated, your paycheck matters to you. And the number one priority for me and our ability is to create products and services that assist individuals with disabilities in joining the workforce. As you know, I've said many times, the unemployment rate, according to the U.S. government, for individuals with disabilities is somewhere around 10%. But the real effective unemployment rate for individuals with disabilities is nearly 65% because people have left the workforce. And that's a economic workforce modeling that I'm not going to get into right now. But that means the real unemployment rate for individuals with disabilities is 65%. We are 2.5 times more likely to be under the poverty level. And yet we're welcome into education programs. And so there becomes a disconnect in how we place people during and post-education into the employment realm. And so that's one of the reasons we exist. It's one of the reasons we're working with the State University of New York schools in this next year to help students with disabilities. There are 92,000 students with disabilities across New York State become marketable into employment arenas. It's one of the reasons why we built Jobsability. Jobsability is a portal that uses generative AI to match individuals with disabilities in under 6 minutes to open positions. Jobsability is growing. It's one of the great, one of the things that brings me pride is no matter how good or bad a day it is, I get an email from somebody in our system that's applied to a position. Our statistics are going up. Our Google Analytics are going up. And so we know that there's an interest by people with disabilities to find employment. And we're working with Syracuse University. I've been named a professor of practice at Syracuse University to create a more accessible and inclusive world, and at the same time, to build disability entrepreneurship. So much that we're going to be able to do here in the next little while. And so I'm thankful and thinking about this on December 3rd, International Day of Persons with Disabilities, thinking about what I'm grateful for and thinking about where we're going. But I'm also looking at the media representation of disability on a day like today. And yes, a majority of the stories as I click down through Google are statements from governments, statements from political leaders designating the day. And then you see the Paralympic story, you see the inspirational story, you see so-and-so has done very well in what would not otherwise be a story unless they're disabled. And then you click through two or three other links, and it takes me to the third page in Google before I get to stories from the India Times. And the India Times is talking about what the government of India is going to do. And what they're doing is recognizing people who are employed, recognizing people who have created jobs, and recognizing those companies owned by people with disabilities that are building an accessible digital pathway. If you think about it, that's exactly what we're talking about. Those are the stories that should resonate. Those are the stories that I wish the disability inns of the world, I wish the valuable 500s of the world, I wish that the United States Chamber of Commerce of the world, obviously there's only one U.S. Chamber of Commerce, but you know what I mean. I wish the chambers of commerce around the country would recognize businesses owned by people with disabilities or employees of businesses that are disabled, because those are the stories that we need to talk about and share, not only on December 3rd, but every day. And we need to do that so that the next generation of individuals with disabilities will see themselves in these stories. The thing about Paralympians is, which is great, and Paralympics has played such an important role in this inclusion model, but not all of us can be Paralympic athletes. And there isn't enough athletic endeavors for people with disabilities that even all people with disabilities can participate. I'm really lucky that I can golf. I can't tell you how lucky I am that I can do that. But I'm not going to be a Paralympian golfer. We need to recognize that people with disabilities, and we need the general population to recognize that people with disabilities just want to achieve what everyone else has the opportunity to achieve. And to be able to do that, we need to understand the sociology and the social model of disability, in that it's society that's disabling us. I've talked about this before, and as far as digital accessibility goes, but how about on a day like today? If it's society that's disabling us, how does that manifest on December 3rd? It manifests as those inspiration porn stories. But you know what I'd rather see on CNN? I'd rather see on CNN or CNBC especially, or Bloomberg. I'd rather see stories on businesses owned by people with disabilities. I'd rather see the economic impact of growing businesses owned by people with disabilities around a specific state around the United States, around North America. There have been so many studies on the economic impact of minority and women-owned businesses, and especially sitting here in New York, we know that as well. But what about the economic impact of businesses owned by individuals with disabilities? That's the story that I'd like to see on those networks, channels, media outlets, social media. That's important to me. I realize we've got a small microphone and not a lot of people hear us. But what I do hope we hear is that there are more stories out there other than just climbing a mountain or being a world-class athlete. They're the stories of us that are business owners or go to work, that receive a paycheck, that have a family, that buy products and services, that just want to be recognized for that. This is the disconnect that's going on in society, general society, Western civilization. There's a dramatic economic difference between the very few that have everything and the 99% that have very little. And that's manifesting in hate. It's hate between two parties. In our country, it's Republican, Democrat. It's been manufactured hatred to take away from the fact that very few have all the equitable wealth. And what really is going on in that manufactured hatred is the middle class just want to be recognized for the middle class work that they're doing. No different in disability. It's wonderful to have the Paralympic athlete on TV. We should do that when the Paralympics are going on. What we should do today on December 3rd, 2024, next year for National Disability Employment Awareness Month in July, next year for International Persons with Disabilities Day, we should recognize the normal people with disabilities. I say normal, the regular people with disabilities that are getting up, going to work, going to get a job, going to get their education, and moving forward in life, just as everyone else is. Those are the stories that we need to hear and we want to share. With our ability, that's what we hear from all of the people that email us every day. They email us asking, can you help me find a job? Thank you for helping me find a job. I'm applying to this position. And they're regular, everyday people. They just happen to have a disability. You want to also applaud those businesses that are recruiting individuals with disabilities in a marketplace where DE&I is dying. Just since the election, in a month, almost a month now, we have had emails and phone calls from businesses wanting to talk about recruiting people with disabilities, wanting to talk about digital accessibility for individuals with disabilities, meaning they want their websites, their web pages, their PDF documents, they want them more accessible so that they can be more inclusive of individuals with disabilities. This is a great byproduct, I think, of the election, that there are still pockets of businesses out there and schools and nonprofits that are looking at how they can do a better job in being more inclusive. Same time, same issue. Today on CNBC, it would have been great if they had S&P Global on CNBC talking about inclusive hiring practices that include people with disabilities. Would have been great to have Disability In or Valuable 500. It would have been great if you'd had Accenture talking about their next report on disability inclusion. That's what we should hear on Bloomberg and CNBC and MSNBC and CNN and all the other ones. Next year, when we're getting ready for our month in July that we talk about employment, or we get ready for early December, I implore you to think about the everyday, regular people with disabilities that want to achieve the things in life that everybody else does. That's what I'm thinking about today on December 3rd.